Welcome to Pathways Through the Prairie. I am State Librarian Mary Soucie, and I'm delighted you could join us today. Today we're going to turn things around, and instead of being the interviewer, I will be the interviewee. My good friend, Andrea Placher, Library Director at Williston Public Library, is here, and she will be interviewing me. Welcome, Andrea, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. This is definitely new for me. I've never been an interviewer on a podcast, so I'm very excited to take the reins and find out a little bit more about you, Mary. So I'll kind of start with the same question that you start with when you ask people, when you interview people, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. So the State Library's vision statement is to provide pathways to knowledge and opportunities. So we all want to know what brought you to libraries.
My journey to libraries started a long time ago. I've been a professional librarian for over 31 years, but really it does go back to truly goes back to my childhood. I spent most of my growing up years in the library, not only reading, but volunteering. My mom was a librarian at the local library. She was the reference and adult services librarian. I always joke that I was the first self-checkout machine, going back to the Gaylord machine days, which most people today don't know what that was. But when I was a kid, you put your library card in the front of the machine, and then they put the card in, and it would stamp your library card, right? There was a little metal clip in your card, and it would like carbon it onto the card. And it made that sound like the ka-chunk sound, right? The Gaylord machine.
I actually had one of those at my library when I was growing up as well.
I love the memories. But I was checking out so often that the head of circulation, and in that library, there was no behind-the-scenes workspace. So they had to go in the back room, but it had a door. There was a window, but they kept it covered. Never made sense. So they had to like peek out to see if someone was there. And she said, I am tired of coming up from the back for you. So if no one's around, reach over the desk and check yourself out. So I was the first self-checkout machine. And then I started volunteering in the children's library. Shout out to Miss Pam, my child librarian. And when I was a senior in high school, I spent my Christmas break helping her reformat the children's collection. We put dots on books, and each colored dot represented a topic. So I don't remember many of them, but I think animals were like blue. So all the animal books got a blue dot to help kids go, oh, a blue dot. And then we made big posters that had a blue dot equals and then a big blow up of what the topic was.
So an early version of genreification, if you will. Yes.
Exactly. And then when I was 18, I led my first story time as a volunteer.
Oh.
And so when I was a kid, I always said I was going to be a teacher and then a librarian. I played school when I was a kid, as many kids do, but I also played library. My mom brought me home some pockets, and I put pockets in my books. And I made my brothers and sisters check out the book if they wanted to read it. And then fast forward, I went to school. I got my teaching degree. I graduated with my teaching degree in 1992.
I did not know you have a teaching degree.
I do. I have an elementary education degree, and I taught preschool, and then I taught first grade at a Catholic school in Chicago. It was an inner city Catholic school, actually. I have some great stories from that experience. I was working at the local White Hen, which is a convenience store, kind of like a 7-Eleven, over the summer, and Pam happened to walk in. And she said, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, I don't have anything going on during the day. I'm, working at night, whatever. She goes, why don't you just come talk to me at the library? And I did not know that was an interview. Thankfully, I dressed professionally. And so my mentor, I'm a librarian today partially because of my mom and because of Pam. And that was my first interview.
Wow.
And so I followed my mentor in my first professional position. And then my mom happened to work at that library one Saturday a month on the reference desk. And I remember that was a long time ago. I started there in 1994. So, right, long time ago. But I still remember I was seeing a salesman, and he said, you don't know how big the shoes are that you have to fill. And I looked at him and I said, dude, you don't know how big the shoes are that I have to fill, because I grew up with Pam as my librarian. And then I started weeding. Pam, I love Pam dearly, but she was not a weeder. And so for our listeners, weeding is when we go through and, we remove materials that are outdated or they're worn out or whatever. And I was weeding the picture book, and I was in R's. So I still had S, like Dr. Seuss, some of the big names, right? And T. And my supervisor came to me and said, "You are to stop." I said, "But I still have a third of the collection." And she said, "And you have weeded a third of the collection. You're done." Okay. So that was my path into the library world. And then I got my degree while I was hired as the youth services librarian with the understanding that I would pursue my library science degree.
Sure. Wow, that's fascinating. That I've learned so much already. So you started out in youth services, you said, and that was in Illinois, in the Chicagoland area, yes. So let's talk about what led you to North Dakota. I know there was a chunk in between, but how did you get from there to here?
Sure. So after I was a children's librarian, then I was a consultant for a regional library system, and then I became a public library director. Never on my radar. Like, children's was where it was at for me. And I was a public library director for 12 years. And my husband said, I think I want to get out of Illinois, the politics, the budget. At that point, Illinois wasn't even passing a state budget.
Wow.
Most of our family was there, and I was like, well, I want to be where family is. And then I broke my ankle in December, and my son was on vacation for winter break, whatever, from college, and he had to go back to school, and I still had a week in my boot, and my husband had a week of vacation to use up. So where else do you go in January to visit but the Mediterranean of the Midwest? And so we drove to Bismarck to visit my brother's family.
Okay.
My brother and sister-in-law and their 6 kids live in Bismarck. And while we were there, my sister-in-law opened the website for Bismarck Public Library, and they were hiring an assistant director. And I decided to go to a women's conference with my sister-in-law on the way home. So my husband left with my sister, and I drove to Minnesota with her. And there was a speaker, Allison Bird was her name, B-Y-R-D. And she said, if you always jump off the same curb, all you get is a sore knee and a sore ankle. So if you're going to jump from the mountain. Wow, and then the conference,
that's awesome.
The conference broke for lunch, and we were such a big group that had come from Bismarck that we had to split into 2 tables. And so we're sitting there, and Allison Bird says, "May I join you for lunch?" Sure. And so she said, "Well, what are we talking about?" And a woman I had just met who became a good friend, Moni, said, "We're trying to push Mary off a mountain." And Allison's like, "Well, tell me more." So long story short, I applied at Bismarck Public for the assistant library director, and I was up against a current employee of 10 years, someone we know well, Christine Cuyaba. And so Christine got the job, which made perfect sense. And then 6 weeks later, the director's position opened up, and I interviewed for that. I was one of 2 finalists again.
Wow.
They didn't hire either one of us, and their interim director, their assistant director who was retiring, that's why they were hiring a new assistant director, stayed for about 1.5 years. But we really at that point thought we wanted to be in North Dakota. And so I interviewed at Dickinson Public Library, and they offered me the position, and my gut said no, and I turned it down. At that point, I knew I would be interviewing for the state librarian job, but I'll be honest, I didn't think I had a chance. State libraries was never on my radar.
Sure.
I didn't have any state library experience. I was not a stater. I didn't know. And I interviewed with a team from the Department of Public Instruction, because the state librarian reports to the superintendent of public instruction. And I can remember, and then Tim Dirks, the director from Fargo Public, was part of my interview as well. And afterwards, you do that after interview chit chat. And I remember saying to Superintendent Baszler, I really expected to be asked the question, why North Dakota? And she said, well, I'd like to hear your answer. And so I answered it. And I talked about the raw beauty of North Dakota and how people miss that a lot of the time. And I remember having a conversation with Tim, who grew up in Wisconsin, And Tim said, you might think you know winter, but you don't. And anyway, so I left the interview, spent some time with the staff. They showed me around Bismarck. We went to lunch, got a tour of the State Library. And that was Thanksgiving week. And then I was offered the position.
Wow.
And I accepted it. And so I had from Thanksgiving to just after Christmas to pack up my life in Illinois. And I left Illinois on January 3rd to drive to North Dakota. My husband stayed in Illinois trying to sell the house, and I lived with my brother's family for 7 months.
Wow. What a jump, a story of events, right? Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit more about the change, right? You said state libraries were never on your radar. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit like what maybe the challenges, mm-hmm. the successes, the differences, what you love about mm-hmm. going from in the public library mm-hmm. sector to a state library.
Sure. I think for me, the challenge was that I had only worked with one state library. And the State Library of Illinois operates very differently than the State Library of North Dakota. I told this story to someone recently, but I started in January, because who doesn't start a job in North Dakota in January? Right. I actually moved here in a blizzard.
Yeah, me too.
And then it was around July, and former Assistant State Librarian Cindy said to me, we should start talking about your testimony. And I said, what testimony? For what? And she said, your budget testimony. And I said, who am I testifying to? And she said, the legislature. And I said, wait, what? That had never come up in the interview process.
Wasn't in the little fine details.
And in Illinois, the state librarian is the Secretary of State. The director of the state library, who I refer to as the real state librarian, right, the director of the state library doesn't talk with legislators. So that wasn't even a thought in my brain.
Sure.
In a lot of ways, working for the State Library in North Dakota was very similar to working for a regional library system in Illinois back in the day, back when I did in the 90s. Mm-hmm. A lot of what we do at the State Library, continuing education, consulting, even though we call it technical support, consulting, being the sounding board for people, interlibrary loan, reference, a lot of that in Illinois was provided we used to have 12 regional library systems supported by the state library, mm-hmm. funded by the state library, but because Illinois is a big state, right?
Right.
And so a lot of the services that we provide at the state library are very similar to what I was used to when I first became a librarian in Illinois. So that was awesome. Like I felt really comfortable with that. I think one of the other great things is our staff. We have a great staff who are very committed to serving not only North Dakota libraries, but state employees and North Dakota citizens, because those are our three constituents. Those are our patrons, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. I think the hardest challenge about being in a state library versus a public library, especially post-COVID, is the lack of direct interaction with the people you're serving. Mm-hmm. We interact directly with libraries all the time. But we don't have the foot traffic, we have some citizens that come directly to us, but a lot come to us through their library, and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. But once in a while, I miss that aha moment when you meet the needs of a patron mm-hmm. so well, whether they're going through something difficult or you've introduced them to a new author or you've had an amazing program. If I'm being honest, like it just, as I said that, it popped in my brain. What I miss the most about not being in a public library is library programs. I loved library programs. I love library programs. That's why we have the Librarian for a Day program where North Dakota libraries can invite me in. And if I'm lucky, they invite me to read at story time or
do a chicken dance.
Or to do the chicken dance or, to do a card making program or something like that. So mm-hmm. I think the best part of my job is the Librarian for a Day. And someone asked me, one of our authors that was at the conference that we're at right now asked me, State Librarian, well, what does that mean? What do you do? And my answer is I get to advocate for libraries at the local, state, regional, and national level. My job is to talk about how awesome libraries are. And that is so wonderful. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. This is the best gig I've had. And I am so grateful to be a state librarian, and specifically to be the state librarian in North Dakota. I love it.
Yeah. If anybody has ever talked to me or heard me talking about you, one of the things that I really appreciate about you so much is how down to earth, how open you are to listening, making new friends, making connections, talking to people. How important is that to you? Because I feel like it's so natural for you, but is that something that is like a goal of yours to be attainable, open? Because I think when people hear the state librarian, they think, oh, I don't think I could even talk to the state librarian. I don't know that I could make that. So is that something that you really try to do, or yeah?
I don't think it's something that I consciously tried to do. There's a tool called the Clifton Strengths Finders, and you answer all these questions, and it's a this or that, right? So are you drawn more to this, or are you drawn more to that, or are you really neutral? And we did that as a team. The whole state library team did that in 2021. And I serve on a board for a national organization, and we're utilizing the Clifton Strength Finder. So I thought I'm going to take it again just to see if things have changed. And my 34 strengths were all the same, but they shifted around. But my number one strength, and it's unusual for someone to have this as their number one strength, is woo. And woo is, for me, it's like cheering people on. But it's about making connections with people, making new friends. Part of it is winning people over, and that's not really what my focus is. From my Clifton Strengths Finder, and it really resonated for me, quite a few of my strengths land in the communication relationship building area. And that it's a strength I've had for a long time. People are always surprised to hear that when I was younger, I was very shy.
Yes. That is very surprising.
If I was in a group I was comfortable with, I wasn't. But if I was in a group of people I didn't know, I was the person sitting in the corner with my nose stuck in a book so nobody would talk to me. And then when I got my job as a regional library system consultant for school and youth services librarians, it became my job to reach out to that person sitting in the corner with their nose in a book and be like, hey, join the group. We're happy you're here. And I sort of broke out of my shell at that time, and I've never gone back. I joke sometimes people probably wish I'd go back in my shell a little bit, because I'm extremely outgoing and extroverted. I just saw something about this recently. COVID was hard on extroverts.
Yes.
It was very hard on extroverts. I find as I get older, I'm still very extroverted, and I still get my energy from people. But I find as I'm getting older, I'm also okay with alone time. And that's been an interesting shift for me. And I'm still, quite frankly, trying to wrestle with it, because it's so different from, I was always the person who, not let's go to the bar, but hey, let's hang out. Why are you going to bed? It's only 10 o'clock. We're at a conference. Let's be together. And I still am that person. But I'm also okay if the people that I'm with are like, it's 10 o'clock. I'm tired. I'm like, okay, then I'm going to go back to my room and I'm going to be alone and I'm just going to enjoy that. And so I think we constantly change and learn and grow and evolve. And so I am changing a little bit in that direction, but making connections with people and making people feel comfortable in the group is still a priority for me, but it's also a natural strength.
Yes. I just love how open you are to just talking to people. It's just one of the things that really pulls me to you and just makes me so grateful to have you as our state librarian.
Thank you.
And so you mentioned a few times that we are at our conference. We're at the North Dakota Library Association conference here in Grand Forks. So and you were just talking about making connections and talking to people. So if you were to talk to maybe some librarians or library staff across the state of why meeting up at these conferences and coming to a conference, if they're available, if they're able to, why it's so important to do that. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. I mean, the obvious thing is education and learning and growth and professional development, the breakout sessions, learning from your colleagues who are often the ones leading the breakout sessions, maybe getting to see an awesome keynote speaker, which we have had some phenomenal keynote speakers.
Yeah, maybe
this
like
year.
R.L. Stein or somebody.
Right. Or Laura Numeroff, who did not give us cookies. Thought maybe she would. But for me, the heart of a conference, and it's been this way for a long time, is connecting with my colleagues. That fills my bucket. That feeds my heart. There's people that I only get to see once a year at the NDLA conference, and I haven't been to the MPLA conference for a couple of years. So to see colleagues from the Mountain Plains area, the 12 states that belong to MPLA, was just wonderful. To get to sit and have a conversation with my colleague from South Dakota State Library. I actually got to do a podcast interview this week with the state librarian from South Dakota, our first out-of-state podcast. Woo-hoo. I don't know if it'll have played by the time this one does or not, but for me, that's the reason to go to conference. The people you'll see, the people you'll talk to, getting to cheer on colleagues that win awards, getting to cheer on our legislators that receive championship awards. I got to connect with Governor Armstrong at this conference, and his team, who I'm already connected to, right? Both of his team members that were with him, I know. But to be able to champion libraries in a different way during conference is really an incredible honor, and it's an opportunity that comes once a year.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that, 100%.
And I have to add, the silent auction doesn't hurt. So we have a silent auction at the NDLA conference. Not all conferences I go to have a silent auction. But for me, that's a way to give back to the association.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And obviously, I sit here as somebody who's been pushing NDLA all week. But yeah, it really is a way to connect. And even if you can't come, there are other ways to kind of stay connected. And I know, and this kind of is going to lead into my next question. I know for me, being all the way in Williston, we're so far apart. There's a lot of miles in between all of us. And was that, going from where you have a 12 regional system and you've got, multiple libraries and, within miles of each other, how has that, how have you kind of navigated through that to kind of help keep us all connected? Because that is one of your things that you do at the State Library is try to keep us all kind of together and connected.
Yeah. When I accepted the job as North Dakota State Librarian, my mom, the librarian, was very proud. But I remember having a conversation with her. I might get a little emotional. And she said, I don't know that you should do this, because what if you don't like it? What other opportunities do you have in North Dakota? When I was ready to be done with the Wilmington Public Library, I had served as their director for 9 years, and I was ready for a new opportunity. And I went to a library 20 minutes away. Bigger, like 3 times as big as my library. I don't have that opportunity here. Like if I'm ready to go on to a new opportunity before I'm ready to retire, that probably means moving out of state. And so that for me gave me pause, and I had to really think about that. And I made a conscious decision that, and the other thing was, I had been a librarian in Illinois for 20 years. I had served on committees for the state library. I had worked for a regional library system. I was on a library system board. I was on a public library board. I had these connections. I had chaired groups, and that was the other thing my mom was worried about, knowing how important people and relationships are to me. And it has been a challenge. I'm not going to lie. It has been a challenge because we are so far apart. When I first came to North Dakota, the NDLA had quarterly in-person meetings. That was great, but that's a small group of people, right? The state library's advisory board, which is appointed by the governor, the North Dakota Library Coordinating Council, used to meet in person 4 times a year. Another way to connect with people. And NDLCC, as we call it, goes out and visits libraries. So that was a way to get out into the library community. Now, today, a lot of it happens virtually, right? I'm so grateful for Teams and texting. And as much as we gripe about Facebook Messenger is another way to stay connected, right? The state library has done different things where we've tried to bring together groups of librarians and provide opportunities for them that way. The state library has an in-person conference every other year, and then we do a virtual conference in the off year, webinars, and then if anybody even hints that they'd like me to come to their library, like, let's book the car and get there, right? And so I think in North Dakota, I have to be more intentional about making those connections and filling my bucket. But I just said this to someone else this week, or probably more than someone's, but one of the beautiful things about North Dakota is how small we are. When you are a small group of people, you can get connected on a really deep level with more than one person. And that is one of the beautiful things about being a part of the North Dakota library community. I'm very lucky. The library community embraced me when I came, and I was able to build connections. And those connections have continued to grow over the last 11 years. And I have a great team who can kind of tell. I don't know if they even realize they do this, Andrea, to be honest. They can kind of tell when I need to get out in library land. And so whether it's our marketing person who books a podcast interview for me or books a librarian for a day or whatever, my team supports me in ways I think they don't even realize.
Aw, yeah. I will say I agree with you. The people really is what makes it here. Obviously, it's beautiful in its own way, right? The flatness on this side of the state, but
the sunsets.
I know the sunsets.
Sunsets.
You can't beat those here. But the people. I agree with you so much because being so far away, but then it's like when you see that person, like you said, we get to come together once a year. It's like you never left each other. Yeah. It's like you're just so connected to them.
Yeah. And I'm a hugger.
Me too, girl.
I'm a hugger,
me too.
And my hug bucket has been filled this week as well.
Yes. So I'm gonna like pivot just a little bit,
okay.
Just because I want to get your thoughts on this because you have been in library land for a very long time. You've had, you've worn many hats throughout your journey. And I just want to touch a little bit because, we've had a little bit of a rough go these last few years with the legislature and just nationwide. Can you talk a little bit to the point of burnout and how we can keep people in library land and what tips, tricks, advice that you can give to that?
Sure. I think number one is the people. Stay connected. Reach out. If you're approaching burnout, call someone that you've met. Talk it through. Don't go insular. Don't turn inside and not explore. Remembering to not take it personally is for me a key element. And I use humor a lot. That old adage, laugh and the world laughs with you, cry and you cry alone, right? I laugh a lot. I try and laugh through things. I have my moments of frustration just like everyone else, don't get me wrong, but I try really hard to not focus on the frustration and to focus on the positives, to focus on what libraries are, not what they aren't, what libraries do, the connections we make, the lives that we save, because we truly do. We truly do.
Absolutely.
And I get to wake up every day and be the state librarian in North Dakota.
You're going to make me cry now.
I mean, it's true. I try to keep that in the forefront, and that helps.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is just like a random get to know Mary a little more question here, because we're both going to start crying if we keep going down this serious path. If there was one library in the entire world that you haven't been able to visit yet, what would that library be?
Gosh. One.
Or two.
I'm going to go with the one that I hope to visit in the next couple of years, Warsaw, Poland.
Okay.
I read a book called Keeper of the Hidden Books a couple of years ago, set in World War II. The two main characters are high school students. One is Polish and one is Jewish.
We were not supposed to make me cry anymore, Mary.
And it's the story of their journey together and separate and what they lived through, and obviously the Keeper of the Hidden Books. So it's also about what the Warsaw Library did to preserve books during that time period. That book is what sparked my desire to visit Poland. I'm 50% Polish, but I want to visit the Warsaw Library and just stand in the place of these amazing people who preserved a part of my heritage that I don't even know enough about.
Wow. That's really cool. I just love hearing, the places where people want to go and where they want to be, and I just love to hear everybody's stories. So yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up with a final question here. Let's see, what's going to be a good final question for you? Because I want to leave on a happy note.
Do you want to ask the question we usually wrap up with?
Yes, sure.
Which is never ask a librarian their favorite book.
Right.
Right.
Yes, that's a hard one because I don't think there's just one for us.
Right.
There just isn't one. But do you have a favorite genre? Do you have a favorite author? Do you have tell us a little bit about
So I love cozy mysteries.
Yes.
And especially cozy mysteries that have recipes in them. Mm-hmm. And I love cozy romances. So I want, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girls back. And in a cozy romance, there might be a kiss. It's about the relationships for me, right?
Yes.
One of my favorite authors doesn't fit in either of those genres.
Okay, interesting.
It's Harlan Coben.
Oh.
He writes, I would say, thrillers. What I love about his books, and I like his standalone books more than his series, his Myron Bolitar series, because I don't like Wynn, and he's a little depraved. But his standalone books always have a twist that I don't see coming, and I should, because they all have it, right? The first book I ever read by him was called No Second Chance. It's an older title, and in it, a man's wife dies. I can't remember now if she was killed because it's been so long.
Sure.
But he gets an email from his wife that says, tell no one. And then in the email, she's like running away. And then the email disappears, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it was from I want to say the early to mid 90s.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Another one I read from him is called No Second Chance. That might be my favorite by his. The main character is a veteran, and she was over in Iraq, and her sister was killed. And she comes back, and she's trying to figure out what happened, and then her husband gets killed.
Oh, geez.
And then is trying to unravel this story. But there is a twist in that book that I was like, what the what? And so I love Harlan Coben books. It's a little unusual for people who know me, just because they're a little on the less cozy side.
Sure.
I love Janet Ivanovich books.
I mean,
They're funny.
hilarious.
They're you just
It's a light, fun read. You can't help but laugh.
It is. The main character is one of the most incompetent people you'll ever meet. But she has fun people around her.
Yes.
So I love the Janet. And I've recommended Janet Ivanovich for years, and the only person that I've recommended her to that didn't like the books was my mom. Oh. My mom did not like those books. So I think those, The Keeper of the Hidden Books, I'm really starting to get into historical fiction a lot more.
It is very popular
so I'm
now,
finding some really good historical fiction books that I like. Keeper of the Hidden Books is definitely one. And then I'm a longtime Harry Potter fan. I have 2 dogs named after Harry Potter characters. Never named beagles after the Weasley twins. Bad idea.
I feel like you're creating something. You're putting something into the universe doing that.
We definitely did, yes. But I reread those every year.
Wow. And if I'm correct, you listen to them on audio?
I do both.
Okay.
But generally, yes, I listen to them. So I'm from the Chicagoland area. We used to drive home every year when Mom was with us for Christmas. And so we would start our journey, my husband and I, because we both enjoy the books, listening to Harry Potter. Harry Potter books, ironically, are the ones that got me into audiobooks. When my son was a kid, one year for the summer reading program, our children's librarian devised a bingo card. And one of the bingo squares was listen to an audiobook. I was like, I don't like audiobooks. And we checked out Harry Potter. And we checked it out so often that she finally said to me, you have to buy your own. You can't check this out anymore. And I said, I'm the library director. She said, yes, you are. Go buy your book. So we did. On cassette tape. That's how long ago it was, on cassette tape.
All right.
And then we listened to Lemony Snicket books. And Series of Unfortunate Events. It's a young adult or a older kids series of these poor kids go through so much.
The Baudelaires.
And I remember we were listening to the first book, and in the first book, like their house slides off a cliff right into the sea, and my son and I are like laughing our heads off. And my husband had never read the books. We had read the books together.
Sure.
And my husband had never read the books. And he's like, what is wrong with you people? And we're like, oh, just wait. It gets worse, better. You know. And so I think for me, that's the heart of what libraries do. It's the heart of what books do. It's the heart of what librarians do. We connect people with things they don't even know they need to be connected with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mary, I am so honored that I was able to be the interviewer today, and I always love spending time with you, and I've learned so much about you.
Thank you.
We've known each other for so long, and I'm like, how did I not know this about her?
Right.
And I'm so glad that we were able to do this, and I'm so glad that you are willing to share your journey with all of North Dakota.
Thank you, Andrea. We are so grateful to you. When I messaged you and said, would you be willing to interview me? Like, there wasn't even a hesitation. You just said, of course I would. That'll be great. So I really appreciate this. Was fun to sit on the other side of the microphone. So thank you for providing me the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And thank you everyone for tuning in to Pathways Through the Prairie. And we look forward to talking to someone new soon.